I mean, you can debate me on that if you want to. Hey, listen to this, Stark. This song sounded like you half-assed that one. Okay, maybe you're right.
Welcome to the Fresh Record Podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Wiley Todd, and I'm here once again and always joined by Benny. How are you doing, Benny?
Doing good. How are you?
Good. And
nice.
Today is a very first for us on the Fresh Record, but something we definitely want to strive towards doing, and that is, of course, having a guest on to talk about their music and stuff like that. So welcome to the podcast, Mr. Steven Stark. How are you doing?
Well, I'm doing just fine, and thanks for having me today. Feeling fresh, ready to go on the record.
So
the Fresh Record.
Kind of some background on me and you, Steven. I wanted to start learning guitar because I thought as a music supervisor, that would be kind of good to know.
Makes sense.
And I need to find, I wanted to do it, and I need to find a teacher. So I started off with doing, what is the Guitar Center? Yeah, Guitar Center. I started doing lessons there, and my mom had a connection through Sarah Winnicky.
Yeah.
And then that's how we connected, and we've been doing this for about a year now.
Maybe longer.
Yeah,
maybe more like a year and a half or something like that.
Yeah.
I'll have to look through my records, my Fresh Records.
So
I'm gonna keep making that joke.
So every week, it's kind of funny. We have conversations most of the time instead of really practicing.
Yes, a little bit. It's very tempting since we have so many mutual interests and are working on a lot of the same ideas.
But with that, we constantly talk about your music and things you're releasing. So let's kind of get started with having that conversation. So how did you start in music? How did your career start? Like, what made you like, I want to do music?
Well, I'll try to give you the quick version because there's a bunch of twists and turns, as you would guess. When I was young, people would tell me, "Oh, you're gonna be a musician when you grow up," because I like to mess around with music, and for some reason, this disagreed with me, and I would always adamantly say, "No, I hate music. What are you talking about?" And I think it's one of those things where you're third, fourth grade, and people keep telling you something, adults keep telling you something. So what are you gonna do? Agree with them? No way. You're gonna go the opposite. So I, signed up for band and orchestra, 6th grade, decided to be a band person. And then I took a look at the two teachers. The band teacher was this middle-aged guy with glasses, and the orchestra teacher was a fresh out of college, long blonde hair teacher. And I went up and erased band on my sign-up sheet and circled orchestra right then. Also, it wasn't just because of that. It was also because everybody was going to band and just a few kids were going to orchestra. And I thought, I want to be in the small group. So I went there, ended up playing the cello, and thought it was fun, no big deal. And then really about 8th grade or so is when the idea of music just really sunk itself into me. And I became obsessed with film scores and a lot of your standard classical pieces, Dvorak New World Symphony, all these types of pieces. And started reading just voraciously about the lives of the great composers and was really on that kind of classical path. And ended up going to the Interlochen music camp one summer, which is like a 2-month camp in Michigan with people all over the world. And went to college, was a music composition major, and that is what my degree is in. But then I started playing in bands, and I got completely derailed in a certain way because I loved songwriting and songs. And I really feel like, in a large part, my whole career has been sort of having a foot in both worlds. One foot in the idea of sort of the classical sphere of the way you construct pieces and the way you develop ideas and melodies, and then the other foot in the world of popular music. And hey, let's make some really snappy, catchy tunes and get people to sing and dance and move, and trying to unite those two things together. And so I played in bands and toured, and I played in symphony orchestras, and I've done a lot of chamber music and played as a singer-songwriter, and that's kind of what I do. And I teach a lot as well.
So you just released 2 new songs called Mom and Dad.
I'm a fan, by the way.
Oh, I appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah.
Mom and Dad. And I thought it'd be fun to play a little bit of it to kind of give listeners just a little quick listen so you guys can listen to it. Just kind of the start of Dad, that we could talk about the project and how you came to this and where you are and doing your career. So here, everybody, the Freshies, listening to a little bit of Dad by Steven Stark.
Living hope is a hope that is bright,
So we'll talk a little bit through it.
Sure.
This is the start. The start of the song is a sermon from your father.
Yeah.
So then talk a little bit about it as it's playing a little bit of this track.
Sure. So this track is a little bit odd. You know, I talk about how I feel like I have a foot in two different worlds. Well, this song has a foot in two different worlds. One of the feet is in the world of, when I was young, my dad was a Southern Baptist preacher. And even though these days we associate that with a really kind of conservative, almost fundamentalist type of religious attitude, my dad was never really that way. He just didn't have that kind of spirit to him. He was more of a change your thinking and evolve and be compassionate towards others. And he didn't fit in to where that denomination of religion kind of went over time. And in fact, he ended up getting out of the ministry. And, but I found this sermon of his, and I just thought it was just musically awesome because he's just got so much pomp, and so much just really raising the voice. He's got that preacher, that Southern preacher kind of vibe to it. It's fun to listen to. Whatever you think of the actual words, just the cadence of it and everything is pretty entertaining. And then the other foot of this song is way different. It's on a different continent. It's in the continent of Africa, and it comes from a track by the Lajadu sisters called Sunshine. They're a Nigerian group from the late 70s. They're cousins of Fela Kuti and are really instrumental in the Afro-pop and Afro-beat kind of movements over there, and had a lot of really successful albums in the latter half of the 70s. And I love their music, and so I was kind of constructing grooves a little bit based on that. And then I thought, why not kind of mash these two ideas together, take the samples of my dad and take some of the groove ideas, which again, I recorded them all, but they're inspired by the Lajadu sisters tracks, particularly their song Sunshine, which is why I sing. The only vocal of mine on either of these two tracks is just me singing the word sunshine, because that's the name of their song that I'm referencing. So it's just a little kind of Easter egg type thing in there.
That's so cool. And after listening to your music since we first met, this is drastically different than everything you have done before.
True.
Like even to some of your side projects like Noonish Moon, it feels like it more fits in that realm than anything, but very drastic. And it's been interesting to follow you on this music journey through doing these lessons, of course, because right before you released that, you did a whole concept album called From Red Dirt to Red Planet.
Right.
Which you were talking me through the whole production of it and how you were doing it and all these other people you were getting involved in it and stuff like that.
Yeah, I probably started that about when you and I started working together.
Yeah, and I remember just having conversations about it and stuff like that. So with this album and these two new singles, do you find yourself going in a certain direction with your music or you're still kind of just messing around and dabbling with what you want to do?
That's a really good question, actually, because I do feel like one of the weaknesses of my career has been messing around and dabbling too much a little bit, sometimes not being focused enough. Now, I want to be clear, whenever I'm working on something, I always work really hard on it, so I don't want anybody to think, oh, he's just messing around. But what I mean is not being focused. These days, it's hard. Every musician wants to keep their options open and not to be pigeonholed into a certain genre or something. At the same time, if you want to create something marketable, you have to pigeonhole yourself. You have to say, I make this specific type of music for this specific type of situation, because how else are you going to find your audience in this just giant fractured world of pop music these days? So I feel like I am starting to focus a little bit right now, finally. And I'll tell you what it is. And I feel like both of the things you referenced, the album and the singles, are just starting to move, along with a few previous things I did, are starting to move more in this direction. And I hope to crystallize it more. And the idea is a genre that I'm going to call composer pop. And the idea, again, is that you're taking a lot of these construction elements from composition, but you're not trying to make like 70s prog rock, like a Yes album or songs that are 20 minutes long. You're still kind of in that. You want to be appealing. You want to have accessible melodies and stuff like that. But why not change keys? Why not have a weird little fugue in the middle of the song? Why not incorporate more orchestral instruments? Why not do things that just don't normally happen in popular music, while, again, not trying to alienate your listener? So that's, I think, where I'm headed. I hope.
It's actually really interesting because we talked about this artist I found recently, not too long ago, Arthur Russell.
Right.
And he is very much a cellist like yourself, and incorporates that a lot into his music. But yet it's still like indie rock, that sound. It sounds like we had this conversation about how this music sounds like it was made this year and it came out like late 90s.
Yeah.
So it's very fascinating. And I feel like what you're doing is also going to be ahead of its realm. Like you can look at every one of your musics and see where you're heading now, and it all links together. So it's really interesting. I'm excited to see where it goes from here.
I appreciate that. Hopefully me too.
Got a question, Benny?
Oh man, so many. Where do I start? So, okay, since we spoke about dad, let's talk about mom. So, perfect. With this project, it was just the two singles, like a side A, side B type thing.
Yeah.
And you spoke about the inspiration for dad. Now, mom of the two is definitely my favorite.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love the vocal
Mine
tracks
too,
on
probably.
it.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Yeah, you did a phenomenal job. I'd just like to hear the backstory to that, since we already delved into dad. Yeah.
Well, I kind of stumbled into this idea of kind of combining my dad's sermon with the kind of Afro pop groove kind of thing and making it into I don't even know, genres are so odd. Is it dance music? Is it electronic? Everything's electronic music these days, but it's not electronic. It's hard to find a genre sometimes. But anyway, so I thought, well, I did my dad. I also happen to have this recording of my mom just singing, and it's real lo-fi, just recording. And there's one moment, it's a song where she's singing with piano, and actually she has a duet partner in the original song as well. But there's this one moment where she just sings the name Jesus, the word Jesus, with nothing else. And so I just took that one little moment and thought I would use it as a sample. I admit I was a little wary to do it because I didn't want people to interpret the track as being religious or something like that. I mean, no knock against that, but that's not really what I'm going for here. I just wanted it to be more meditative, but I felt like the way she sings that word just captures my mom's spirit and personality so well. And so I took that, and then I was inspired by another African group from the late 2000s. I'm sorry, from the late 20th century, actually mid 20th century, and they're called the Bembeya Jazz National, and they're from the country of Guinea, and really had their heyday in the 1960s and 70s, and were really influenced by both American jazz, Afro-Cuban type stuff, then of course things more indigenous to Africa, and just created this really cool horn-driven kind of dark sound that also has these electric guitars that are really reverberant, almost reminiscent of a surf guitar kind of sound to me, not in the notes, but just in the style of the sound. And so I wanted to combine that. So you can, when you listen to that track, you'll hear those kind of reverby guitars phrasing back and forth, and then the horns punctuating throughout. And then, of course, my mom singing throughout that meditative version of the word Jesus. So, yeah.
Awesome. You want to play a little snippet of it while we chat a little bit more?
Yeah, I will. I'll play a little bit of Mom by Stephen Stark. Let me pull it up real quick. Sorry.
Yeah, you're good. And while he's doing that, I noticed you have a lot of fun with innuendos in your music, in your lyricism.
Interesting.
Yeah. So you had an album, I don't remember the full title, but something about the horny toad.
Oh, yeah.
What's the title of it?
Okay, so that's called "Where Did the Horny Toad Go?"
Yes,
and that's actually from a movie. It is. It's a
Okay.
soundtrack to a documentary.
Okay.
And so yeah, the innuendo is I don't know. Everybody laughs at the name horny toad, but that's what people call them. Like in Texas, unless you go to TCU in Fort Worth, and then it's called the Horned Frog. Because, the TCU Horned Frogs, that's their mascot.
Yeah, I noticed the song. It was like the horny toad, the horned frog, and the horned lizard.
That's right. Because those are ways that people refer to the same species or creature.
Got it.
And this documentary is so good. It came out, I don't know, probably 10 years ago, maybe a little more than that. And it's they wanted this real kind of acoustic kind of based music, real kind of natural organic feel. So everything in it is just guitar, mandolin, some cello, some violin. I'm playing everything on it. And it's just a really great documentary. It sounds to me like a little bit dry or sad because it's all about how come this creature has disappeared in its numbers, but it's actually a really uplifting movie. We talked because they're not in danger. They're just when I was a kid, even you'd walk outside in the country in Texas, that's where I grew up, and you would find these creatures and you could pick them up and you could rub their bellies and their eyes would close like they were going to sleep. They're just so cute and so fun. I was not the kind of kid to go out and catch a bunch of frogs and stuff like that. That wasn't me. But even these things, they were just so easy to get a hold of. They were so charming and cool. And they're a lot fewer in numbers these days. And that's what this documentary is talking about.
Cool.
Now, unfortunately, it's not distributed anywhere right now, which just kills me because it is
Netflix, come buy it.
I know. It's true.
Get Steven's royalties.
You should see it. Exactly. It's great. It has all these animations that are so well done and that are talking about this creature, and it interviews all these experts, and it's really entertaining and fun to watch. And but yeah, it's not out right now, so I need to talk to the filmmakers and get them to cut a deal with Netflix.
Is it on YouTube or anything?
No. I think the only thing on YouTube may be like the opening title sequence or something like that. I'll have to look later, but I haven't looked in many years, so I need to look.
Okay. So that album itself was specifically for that documentary.
It is the soundtrack for that documentary.
Okay.
So,
and the art style that's on the album cover it correlates with the art style in the documentary. Okay.
Yep. There's all these animations that are really great to watch, and that's exactly where it's from.
Yeah.
You nailed it.
Yeah, I went through that album before, and then Mom and Dad, and then also some tracks from Red Soil to the Red Planet,
from Red Dirt to Red Planet.
Yeah,
that's right.
I did a little deep dive into Steven's music.
Yeah, and that record, without going too deep in the concept, the idea is that a bunch of Oklahomans in the future leave Oklahoma and go to Mars. And that's the idea of from Red Dirt to Red Planet.
Cool.
We call this the Red Dirt State sometimes, and then of course the Red Planet. And it features collaborations with a ton of Oklahoma artists, including like Bo Jennings. He's a great kind of Americana songwriter here in town, and Stephen Droz from the Flaming Lips, and I do a song on there.
Oh wow!
Yeah, the last track on the record is a collaboration with him, and that was really fun because I did the lyrics because he doesn't generally do lyrics, but we had a great time. I would just send him a rhythm track, and then he would send me back a whole bunch of chord changes over top of it, and then he would add a bass track, and then I ended up adding like the orchestral sounds on top. So we constructed this whole musical structure, and that track, oh gosh, it's the last track on the album. I'm trying to remember what it's called.
I can look. I got you.
But yeah, it's a pretty spacey, groovy kind of orchestral sound.
Scientists and Poets, A Blanket of Stars.
There you go. That's right. And the titles are a little weird and hard to remember on that album because every track has the character first, who is supposedly singing this on the spaceship going to Mars, or their perspective, and then the title is after it.
I really like the track Engineers Matches with Bo Jennings.
Yeah.
I really do enjoy that peaceful track and stuff.
Oh, thanks.
Like that,
yeah. A lot of people have, it's funny because that was one of the tracks I put out as a single, and it didn't really get as many plays as the other one. And I don't know why. It may just not have tripped some algorithms or something, because people keep telling me that's their favorite one. I'm like, well, why is it getting the fewest listens out of all of them? That's weird, but it's just not showing up, I guess. Who knows? Yeah. Maybe it confused the algorithms.
That's the reason we're doing this podcast, because we want to shout out the smaller songs, the fresh finds.
Yeah, of course.
There you go. But that track was cool because that was a totally different collaboration. Stephen Droz and I, it was very musical and built organically from the ground up. With Bo, we tried writing a couple of songs, and it just wasn't quite working yet. It was just wasn't quite there. And he had a much more lyric-based approach, whereas Stephen in the Flaming Lips, he's the music guy, and then you think of Wayne Coyne as being the lyric guy generally. Well, Bo's a very lyric-oriented guy, and music, of course, too. But what we ended up doing is take an older song that he had written, and we reworded it. We did a bunch of edits and changes to it to make it fit, and it ended up, I thought, fitting really well into the flow of the record.
Nice. Yeah. Now, the Flaming Lips are an Oklahoma based band. Oh, okay, I didn't know that.
They are.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
The more you know. I know there was like a Flaming Lips drive by
That's
Bricktown
right.
somewhere. Yeah, I saw that. I was like, oh, cool. And then Mickey Mantle too, I think. I forget. Yeah, I was like all right there. Anyways, I'm deviating from the point of this.
The famous, one of my favorite artists, Chet Baker, is from Oklahoma.
Oh, that's true.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, man,
very small town in Oklahoma.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, it's surprising,
Yeah.
all these people you wouldn't expect. Oh, wow, they were born here. Where
Yeah.
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 There was another song I came across. It wasn't on anything that we've spoken about. I think the album was Airplanes, Baseball, and Cats.
Yeah. A is
right?
for airplane, B is for baseball, C is for cats.
Yeah. There was a song called Bases on it, I think.
Bases. See, that's what I thought of when you said there were songs with innuendo.
Yeah, that was another one I noticed.
That was my attempt. I thought, you know what? Okay, so the story of that album is I don't think it works really well as an album. I'll just say that.
Okay.
And the reason why is because I found out that I was going to have our first kid. We were going to have our first kid. My wife was pregnant. And I thought, I got to record an album really fast before I can't do anything. And so I kind of hustled, and that record just doesn't, I think there's some good moments on it, but it was very hurried. And a lot of the songs, I just felt like I didn't really have them organized production-wise to really appeal in any sort of way. It was more me exploring writing songs than trying to produce things to get out into the world, I think. But a couple of them I like, and that one I kind of liked.
Yeah, I liked it.
It was attempting to be a kind of almost big band era kind of jazz standard idea, and with a duet. And I duet with a guy, Matt Brown, here in town, Matthew Alvin Brown, who's a really gifted songwriter and actor. And he and I were in a band together. And so we sing that back and forth. And yeah, the whole thing's basically just a giant innuendo using the traditional first base, second base, third base to represent other things. Yeah.
I wasn't sure, like it's like for interpretation. Yeah.
Well, yeah. It also works as a baseball track. You know?
It does.
Yeah. Totally.
So, okay, nice. Yeah. I love the metaphoric language you put in there.
Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah. Take what you want from it.
You have anything? I had something in mind, but it slipped just now.
Oh, that song, by the way, is called Running the Bases.
Running the Bases.
That's what it just came back to me.
Okay.
If anybody looks it up later.
You play it again. Now do your part.
Oh, now I remember. So when it comes to your music, do you produce everything yourself, or like what roles do you play in crafting your recorded music, at least?
That album we just talked about is the only one that I didn't produce myself. That one I went into a studio, worked with a guy, and he was following what I wanted, but I think that it just our lack of time and everything, it got really hurried and it didn't end up quite the way we wanted it. But everything else, though, I produced myself. We talked earlier about, before we started, I almost said recording. There you go. That I'm a singer, but kind of out of necessity. I'm a singer like Paul Simon is a singer, or I don't know, even somebody like, I don't know, you could think of anybody. I'm not a singer. I just want to put the song across as best I can. But producer the same way. I'm a producer out of necessity. I feel like I have a lot to learn as a producer. But yes, I am producing everything myself these days.
You also have like a ton of side projects we talked about. Noonish Moon, which is what you're doing. You have Noonish Moon. And then I'm forgetting the name of the other one, the other side project.
Well, the other one I decided I think I'm going to retire. But here's the idea. Some people might get a kick out of this. You go on to what used to be Twitter, and you want to be snarky, and so you make a burner account, right? So I thought, I need a burner band, for all the stuff that, it's not like I didn't work hard on it, but it just doesn't fit. So, but I still kind of want to just have it out in the universe somewhere. So I made a project called Fuchsia Chicken, and that's what it is. And I ended up just basically I got a whole bunch of new sound libraries, and I produced 2 songs just trying to learn how to use them. And I thought, I don't think I should put them out under my name, but you never know. So I'll just create this other name and put it out there. I think there's 2 tracks on it. And I originally thought it would end up being my instrumental, only kind of project, but I'm realizing I need to just focus on my name, because, I'm not going to find any listeners if I don't.
You never know.
You never know. You're right.
You never know. Like, Joji, do you ever hear of Joji before?
I don't know.
So he got his start on YouTube as a personality called Filthy Frank, and he started making music as Joji, completely like separate from this very successful. What would you call it? Filthy Frank. You're more of a YouTube person than I am.
He's more like a comedy YouTuber. Skits.
Okay.
Yeah.
Skits.
Sure.
Musical skits too, right?
Kind of.
Yeah.
I was never really a viewer of him.
Yeah. I believe there was a lot of like musical skits in it. Funny guy.
Yeah.
But he started this complete side project. And I believe he's even been nominated, if not has won a Grammy for
He might have been.
It's great.
Yeah.
He's very talented, but you would never know. I mean, like people knew eventually, but he didn't like broadcast it on his other project or anything, and just naturally grew from the ground up.
That's cool.
Yeah, but I think if you stay consistent and you play your cards right, you could amount to anything in this. Yeah.
I think you're right about consistency.
Yeah.
And that's, again, focus and consistency is difficult, especially to be a full-time musician, which I am. You have to do so many different things at the same time. You just
There's
feel,
the business side.
oh my gosh, yeah.
Too,
You're writing pieces for like things I do. I play for weddings. I teach lessons. I write pieces for middle school and high school. I've taught overseas. The last couple of years I've been in the Middle East quite a bit.
Wow.
Teaching over there. Yeah. So there's just so many things going on. I'm working with a couple of guys who want to write songs, so I've been hired as a professional songwriter for 3 different projects over the last year to help them with that. So yeah, the focus thing is really hard because you go on to advice for promoting your music. Oh, you need to be consistent. You need to put content out every day. You need to do this. And they're right. But, oh, man, it's hard to do.
It's really hard to do.
Yeah.
You also don't want to half-ass anything.
Exactly.
Just like put something out to put it out, then it doesn't really represent you or your artistry.
And I have done that. Not in my music. I don't want anybody to, again, listen to things. But as far as some of my content, I mean, you can debate me on that if you want to. Hey, listen to this, Stark. This song sounded like you half-assed that one. Okay, maybe you're right. But you're right. There's so many videos I put out. Some of them I really care about. Some I think, man, kind of regret putting that one out there, regardless of how many views it gets, because you're just muddying up the giant social media landscape when you half-ass it.
Of course.
Yeah.
But we all got that. Everybody goes through that.
We're going to do it sometimes. I mean, you got to be easy. You can't be too hard on yourself.
There's one song I do want to cover. I mentioned this one that I love so much, Talking Tears.
One for the sailor left behind, and 2 for...
Oh, yeah.
Came out in 2019. I'm going to play a little bit of this song as we're talking about it.
I have to say this is one of my favorite ones
Yeah.
of mine. I'm glad that you like it.
It's definitely one of my favorite because it goes into different realms as it starts off with this, like, I think it's a flute. Is it?
It's a mellotron, and you're right, because a mellotron is a keyboard that has flute samples. So when you push down a key, a flute sound comes out. If you think of the opening of Strawberry Fields Forever by the Beatles, that's a mellotron. And that's what I'm referencing here. Yeah.
But like what I love about this song is it feels like a road trip song,
Oh, nice.
like Garden State-esque.
Oh, cool. Yeah.
Because like when you were looking at Garden State's soundtrack, sorry to go into my soundtrack rants as I usually do.
Do it.
But with Garden State, there was big artists on there, but they because the soundtrack had so much cred and people were like, it was so well placed, people started loving the music and they grew into have a big fan base.
They did.
And I feel like tons and tons of movies every year, they're mostly indie movies, tried to replicate that and what it's trying to do.
Yeah.
And I feel like your song would fit perfectly in one of those because it is that, like, you could place it in multiple scenes. Like just how my brain works for you freshies is I'll hear this song and I'll be like driving down the highway works, kind of coming to senses and like I want to change something. It works there, like things like that. I just feel like it's beautiful and works well. And because songs are only placed for only increments of time,
right?
You could put that beginning of it and it works as well as a different placement. So I feel like this song has a lot to it. I always come back to it. It's always been my favorite of yours. So could you talk about the creation of Talking Tears?
Absolutely. So Talking Tears, I had an idea for 2 different songs and I was working on both of them. And I thought, I kind of want to use this mastering engineer, but it costs like $125 a song to get songs mastered. I mean, I can kind of master them myself, but I do not do a good job compared to the pros. And I thought, what if I just combine them into one song? Then I'd only have to pay one time to get it mastered. That was literally my thought about it. And so I turned it into this big ABA kind of song. So the beginning is kind of a upbeat, but very guitar driven. Lots of arpeggiated guitar. The lyrics are a little abstract, but there's harmonies, and then it ends up transitioning. It uses a metric modulation where it goes into a triplet feel, ta, 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 and then that becomes the beat of the new section. And then middle section is a kind of Beatles-esque, kind of jaunty, swingy kind of feel with a lot of cellos and a lot of those mellotron flute sounds, a lot of harmonies, again, vocal interplay. Again, very, very much a conscious sort of callback to a Beatles-esque sound, thinking of that early mellotron that used at the beginning. And then it comes back again to the A section, this time a key higher than it was at the beginning, and kind of comes back around and spins out to that at the end. And I have to say, sometimes you listen to your tracks and you think that didn't come out quite how I wanted to. I don't hate it, but that one I still really like. I mean, don't get me wrong. I've got a few criticisms I could make, which I may not say right now because I'm not afraid people will only listen to that, to the little things I don't like in the production. But generally, I'm glad you like that one. But it does speak to, I'm glad you also referenced putting songs into placements and soundtracks of movies, because that's something I interpret as a weakness in my music, because for better, for worse, I tend to make songs that kind of the sound, I don't mean this that they're particularly good, but they a little bit demand your attention a little bit. Whereas, and again, that's not necessarily good or bad, it just is. Whereas a lot of songs that work well, maybe just as good of a song, but they may have a little more of a peaceful vibe that can fit into a scene better, or have more of a groove that sustains itself a little bit longer. So that's tough. And if you've done music for movies, you realize you have to walk that line between creating something distinctive that's good to listen to, but doesn't distract from the film.
Yeah. Cookie cutter
really
lyrics.
hard.
Yeah.
A little sometimes.
Yeah.
But and again, not criticizing, because some of the classic songs of all time have generic lyrics that can fit a variety of applications. And if you get too specific, sometimes you can limit the appeal. But if you get too cookie cutter, then it becomes like, what am I even listening to?
This sounds like a music library track.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So it's really difficult, I think, to find that line.
Yeah. And that's the thing, some great music are not meant for placement, know, and just like, that's completely fine. Placement is just like another way to see things from a different lens, like some of the most iconic placements are synonymous with the movie now.
100%.
Yeah. So, and that's good for worse, like Stuck in the Middle with You from Reservoir Dogs, where he's cutting off the dude's ear. Like, that's synonymous with that scene now. Even though that's just a good song, like Stuck in the Middle with You, it works as a placement, but also like, not like super, like not cookie cutter lyrics,
Yeah, and it can make you look at the song in a totally different way, and then also the scene, of course, in a different way. And I think it's great. And again, I'm a big fan of music that fits in. Like, I love ambient music. You're not supposed to sit there and just listen to it directly. It's supposed to there's an art to that, to make music that fits the vibe of a certain setting. I love all that stuff.
That's the thing with like scores, right? Like, a lot of people are like, oh, the best scores are the ones you don't hear. I disagree.
Yeah.
The scores that like stick out to you within what's going on is the best, in my opinion, where you're like, you're watching the scene, they're having this heavy dialogue, and then you're like, oh, wait, what's that? Like, you're kind of thinking like, I love Thomas Newman. He's my favorite composer. And Finding Nemo is like, it's starting off its animation, so you're always like, wow, looking around, but then you hear like the piano come in and you're just like, wow, I'm hit with this wave of emotion.
Right.
So I completely agree. But that's all we have time for today.
Yeah.
Steven Stark, where can they find, why did I say Steven Stark? Steven, where can they find you and find your music and what you are currently working on?
You bet. Well, you can always get in touch with me if you want to just go to my website, stevenstarkmusic.com. You can do that. Or you can find me, Steven Stark Music, on all the social medias, TikTok, Instagram, wherever you are. And my stuff is streaming everywhere, so you can just look for it. I'm on Bandcamp. Kind of more recently, I've started turning my attention to that because it's a really cool avenue for artists. And then, of course, on all the streaming areas, Steven Stark. I do have a side kind of synth guitar band project called Noonish Moon that you referenced that is a little bit different from my other stuff. And if you can spell fuchsia, you can look up those two Burner Band Fuchsia Chicken tracks. But really, that's not what I'm promoting right now. But yeah, there you go.
Benny, where can people find you?
You can find me at Benny Camella. There's only one of me, so I'm
Nice.
very easily found.
Amazing.
I'm not going to spell it. If you'll figure it out, I'm sure it's in the description somewhere.
You can find me at Wiley K. Todd on all social medias. And The Fresh Record, please follow, like, and subscribe. Check out Steven Stark's music and give it a stream. Even buy it on Bandcamp to support a small artist, as you should. So we'll see you guys next time on The Fresh Record.